Good morning. It's Friday, March 13th, 2026. In a little early edition of House Transportation Committee. We are working on a T-bill piece and we are doing a kind of a final review of all the adjustments we've made to some transportation alternatives language. Reminder, this is about a significant amount of federal funding that has not gotten out of the transportation alternatives programs based on a number of cancellations and other issues, and we are looking to open the parameters up a little bit more for the agency to make sure to get that money out before it expires, is what my recollection is. Somebody wants to characterize it otherwise. If I missed anything, please do. And otherwise, I'll turn it over to our ledge counsel to walk us through the revised or final version and see whether or not it's ready to potentially move into the T-bill.
For the record, I'm Damon Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Pulling up on the screen now the latest draft, which is identical to what you looked at yesterday afternoon. Just it's gone through editing. So the first change is going forward after this fiscal year, the maximum grant award will be $600,000 instead of $300,000. The next change is we've eliminated the percentages starting with this coming fiscal year going forward. So there will no longer be a requirement that 50% be set aside for water quality. Instead, now program funds shall be awarded for any eligible activity, and the language we added yesterday, including environmental mitigation projects relating to stormwater and highways, such as eligible salt and sand shed projects, and infrastructure-related projects and systems that will provide safe routes for non-drivers. And then the other change in the bill, which was in yesterday's version, is allowing for this coming fiscal year for the maximum grant award to be up to $1.2 million per grant allocation.
Does anybody have any questions about that language?
That captures everything that the committee wanted to do.
Okay.
And I moved to include that in our draft transportation bill.
Everybody there, thumbs up if they're on board with that. Representative Burke, are you there?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm looking where I can raise my hand. I'm sort of at a disadvantage here
Speak right.
because I wasn't able to participate all yesterday.
Yep.
At home recuperating.
Sound good.
So I'm just that would just went sort of fast for me. What is it going to be the 80-20? Is that what we're talking about?
Representative Pouch would like to.
Sure. Hi, Molly. No, there's no percentage to either to water quality or transportation alternative projects. So it's wide open. But I think from the testimony we heard that by far there's more transportation infrastructure, small projects that can go through. So this gives the agency wide berth on how much goes to water and how much goes to transportation alternatives. But I think from the testimony, we know the majority will go now the transportation alternatives. And this is all about getting the money out in the next year so that we don't lose any and we potentially are open for getting more by not having underspend.
Yeah, I'm just concerned, which I have been all over this time. Would like to make sure that there's some money for the Safe Routes to Schools programs, which have been severely restricted over the past number of years. So I'm trying to figure out if
we heard testimony on this, and the agency is looking at a highway safety program, which fits better for Safe Routes to School, and they've, I think, committed to moving money into that category from those funds. And these funds will be used primarily for infrastructure, for transportation alternatives rather than education.
which includes bike ped.
Right,
And
bike ped, yeah, it has the highest priority.
this section is weighted.
And it also includes, sorry.
Representative White, Representative Lally, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Representative Burke, I'm glad to hear you're feeling a little better, and I just want to call your attention to the previous page, the highlighted section, the updated language, which says including environmental mitigation projects relating to stormwater and highways, such as eligible salt and sand shed projects and infrastructure-related projects and systems that will provide safe routes for non-drivers. So that calls out infrastructure projects that safe routes to schools, I think, can be a part of without specifying every particular program that could be included here.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the desire to not sort of limit, what happens if there isn't a project ready, but I guess the question is, could somebody apply for a Safe Routes to Schools program through the transportation alternatives?
Yeah, and I think yesterday we had that conversation, and yes, I think for infrastructure related safe routes to schools projects, those are appropriate for this grant program.
Okay, because there are other aspects to the Safe Routes to Schools, like a coordinator and, other aspects of it that, it's sort of, all right.
And I think there was another grant program mentioned yesterday, I don't recall the name, that was more appropriate for non-infrastructure related safe routes to schools programs. I don't know if anyone.
The highway safety program, yeah.
Okay,
Representative Lally?
yes, we had some really good discussion up on that topic and the importance of planning and helping communities get ready to be in a position to utilize this funding to build that infrastructure.
Mhm.
So that was, my understanding was that was something was a priority for the agency, and they were working on that too, but using it in this particular sort of bucket, the HISIP, I think is the acronym for it.
I was just wondering about like mentioning the Safe Routes to Schools, mentioning the Safe Routes to Schools program in the legislation.
So if I may,
It's still yours.
so yes, that is something that was also discussed by the committee, and they do prepare marketing information, and that more level of detail would be something that would be in the marketing information.
Okay.
Whereas this is a little bit more of the broader catch-all level in the legislation.
Yeah, well, I would just like to follow up with that and see if that actually happens. I just think things get lost if you don't specify them and people forget and whatever. Anyway, okay, well, thanks for your input, everybody. Wish I were there with you.
I appreciate the dialogue, and I appreciate, I think that there was a significant attempt in the committee to represent Representative Burke's opinions, even though she wasn't able to be here. And it does call out that particular program. And we still have the traffic highway safety portion that we can continue to work on. So I think we were in the middle of the vote though, and I probably let some discussion, I should have let the discussion in before the vote.
Yeah,
So
I think we have it in,
I
yeah.
think everybody had a thumbs up. But,
Yeah.
either way, whether we have enough of them. And so I would instruct our legislative council to move that language into our T-bill for this year.
Okay,
Okay, I'd like to use the next few minutes, if we could, to use some language that I've asked the legislative council to work on based on a subject I kind of mentioned a couple of times, in that I think that helping our town highway departments, our towns are hit with the same level of construction costs and inflation issues that the state is. We've done a tremendous job of educating the building on the T-fund situation, but I'm not sure that everybody understands that the highway departments and our towns, our municipalities are facing the exact same struggles and issues, and finding the funding for the T fund does not by any definition translate over to health, to the town highways, to the town structures, to town highway aid. And I would like to see our committee take a look at this, where currently local options taxes are sent to the state, they're split. There's a fee for processing the local option tax filing, and then the split of the revenue is 75-25, and 25 goes into the pilot. The pilot is currently funded at the level amount that it comes out. There's 12 new towns and municipalities that pass local option tax at town meeting. There will be additional revenue coming. The pilot is fully funded, and I think that we could convince members that helping the town highway with money that was collected in the town by sending some portion of it back to them is worthwhile for us to try to do. And I asked the legislative council to draft some language to try to put our stake and claim in that money that's coming in from the towns to go back to the towns. And that's really that simple. That solving the T fund problem does not solve the challenges of our communities that have been hit by all kinds of weather-related issues and challenges, in addition to their bite of inflation. That's probably the number one challenge that's eaten into their budget. So that's what I'm trying to help push the committee towards. I'm looking for support along that, and this will be a first run at some of that language that might do that. If I'd like to take a look at it for the next 10 minutes and then let you go to the floor. Representative Pouch?
I'm looking at the language for the first time. Oh, you're gonna go through it?
I am.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
I haven't been through it either entirely.
Right.
Representative Burke, did you figure out how to put the hand up, or did you
Can't put it down now.
can't put it down now?
No,
Is that what you're doing?
I'll wait for the language. Okay, I do have a question, but I'll wait for the language.
Okay. So the open to the language here, so local option taxes are, the state's proceeds from them are deposited in the pilot special fund. The pilot special fund is used for a couple of things. The two primary ones are pilot payments to the town and also grand list stabilization payments for properties that have been flooded out. So what we're doing here on the first page is simply adding in, there's also payments for correctional facilities that are located in a municipality. We're adding in a reference to subsection C, just to authorize the payments that we're going to be, or that this draft creates there. So subsection C provides that if the local option tax revenues deposited in the pilot special fund in any state fiscal year exceed the full amount of the payments that are made under subchapters 4 and 4C. So subchapter 4 is the pilot payments and the correctional payments. Subchapter 4C is the grand list stabilization payments. So if all of those have been met, 1/2 of the amount by which the local option tax revenues exceed those payments would be transferred to the transportation fund in the next fiscal year and allocated to general state aid for town highways. So that's the general formula program that goes out to all municipalities in the state based on your mileage of class 1, 2, and 3 roads. And the language added in 306 provides that, if you remember 2 years ago, I believe, so the last biennium, this committee added an inflation adjustment so that general state aid for town highways didn't kind of kept up with inflation. And then last year we added that for town highway structures and town highway bridges, I believe. I could be wrong on the second one there. But what this says is that in addition to the base appropriation there, which will stay the same or go up with the inflator, these additional amounts would be appropriated, distributed and used in the same manner, but it's sort of a payment on top of that. So, if, let's say there's 10 million in the base appropriation and there were $2 million in excess pilot revenues, $1 million would come in so that your base appropriation plus the additional amount would become like $11 million, if that makes sense.
That'd be the new base for the following year.
No, so this wouldn't change the base.
Oh, wouldn't? Oh, I thought you were saying this.
Yeah, so this wouldn't change the base. So that year you'd have 11 million. Let's say the year after that, there was no excess in the pilot fund. You'd have 10 million plus the interest adjustment. So if pilot payments go down and they're tied to things like sales tax, which can fluctuate with the economy, or if the pilot revenues go down, this will not keep drawing out if the revenues are not enough to cover the payments. But if they are enough to cover the payments, it'll take a portion of the excess, but not all of the excess. There are other things that the pilot fund is used to pay frequently in one time, which is where the complication comes into this. They're not necessarily in a statutory formula. So the placeholder language sets it at 1/2. And it's essentially the year after you've had a year where there's excess local option tax revenue for the state, you'll get a bump in town highway aid. Because we won't know what those revenues are until the end of the fiscal year. In years, or if we have an economic downturn and the local option tax revenues dry up a bit, then you'll see these payments dry up for a while. So it's not a guaranteed income source, but it is essentially a surplus. And there's a surplus for the state, and some of it goes back to the towns and town highway aid.
And because of that, I don't think you can put the T fund on the obligation, as it will fluctuate up and down. We can't build the T fund,
Yeah.
transfer to the towns on an up and down number is what that idea of that piece. So Representative Pouch and then Representative
A
Lau.
couple things. One is, so we're only.
I'd like to talk too.
Yes, okay.
So a couple things. One is, we're only taking 50% of the excess. So the assumption is that other 50%, nobody's claimed yet, it will just continue to be in that fund. And it sounds like the fund sort of has fixed costs as far as the prisons and state buildings in municipalities. That doesn't change, and it's not going to change significantly. Then those costs would be the same unless there's some inflationary thing on those, or they're tied to property taxes or something. But the third piece, covering property tax for flooded areas, that could grow in any particular year. And then that would be a time when I guess we wouldn't get any additional town money potentially.
So
That makes sense?
Yeah, so the way the grand list stabilization program works is when the municipality acquires a flood prone property and it comes off the grand list, they can apply to the commissioner of taxes. And it's only for properties that have been acquired since July 1, 2023. And then when they get certified and added to the list, they get an annual payment for that property to compensate for the loss of the municipal property tax. And then that payment is made for 5 years. And then, let's see, there's additional language there that they can go up to 10 years. At an additional 1/2 amount. So it's not a program I'm an expert on, but it sounds like essentially if you have a flood and you do a buyback, then you can up for 5 to 10 years, you can get a payment from the state. So this will fluctuate a bit, but it's a known cost for the state. The other thing to keep in mind is because of the way the pilot fund works here, is that excess is also does create insurance for the economic downturn. So it is a bit of a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
in there. So they,
50%. It'd be
Right.
interesting to get an estimate of like what it would have been last year or what it would have been next year, if that was possible. just to get an understanding of the scope.
Yes, and on Tuesday, we will hear from JFO and Logan and one of his colleagues on picking up from what we heard in the joint session with the Senate regarding this money and what it is, how much, what's the anticipation of the 12 new towns, what could be the situation. It's not going to fix all of our town highway
No.
issues, I want to be clear, but we found a way to get them some additional help last year. It's been a mission of mine to work on finding a way to help them some this year. And so Representative Lally and then Representative Burke.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the time frame in which we might have this information about what we might expect in the, how that works in the,
Tuesday.
no. I meant, let's say we put this in, this, everybody agrees we put this in place. How, just what, when, the towns would, this would be based on the previous years, you know, everything would be accounted for, and then whatever the excess would be, we would be eligible. But at what is the, at what point do we know what that number might be? Maybe that's going to be part of the Tuesday presentation. Just so we have a sense for, like, yeah.
Along the lines of, we would not be looking to touch anything with this year's budget.
Understood, yes.
We would be looking to have it in place and being tracked, and we don't know how those towns will come on or not. And we know there's other fights for that one-time money, but we are going to get presentation. That'll be definitely, the ears that are out there are listening to exactly the type of questions that are going to be asked. That'll be able to be prepared for Tuesday.
Okay, so we'll get the mechanics of how this might work will be.
That's, I'm looking for that nod, yes.
I'm getting a nod in the corner. Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, so would this money get distributed to all towns or just towns that have a local option tax?
This money, because it's in the general state aid for town highways, it goes to
Yeah.
all towns in the
Okay.
state based on your mileage. And there's a formula set up for
Right,
that.
yeah, it doesn't sound like it's a huge amount of money that would go to the towns.
Yeah, it's likely not an enormous amount of money, but it adds a little bump to
Yeah.
those grants. So I don't know how this compares. I think Logan can probably give you a better idea of like what we put out each year in these grants, total, and then from there you can kind of start to conceptualize what the amounts might be, and he can also give you info on revenues
Right.
and what the experience has been with the local option tax revenues.
I know we're up against
Well,
the
the other
time
thing
frame.
that I'm interested in, and maybe it's a little late in the game, but it sort of seemed like it was being tossed around between two committees, is the adding the ability, as we talked about earlier in the session, to have towns that have a local option tax to add an extra percentage onto their existing tax. And I don't know, I guess I need to talk to my colleague in Ways and Means, but what is happening with that conversation? It seemed like it was a conversation that was happening, and then it seems like, I don't know what's happened to that conversation.
But we did miss you over the Representative Tomlin. Several of your colleagues in the committee have asked that question, and then real quickly with the administration coming on the opposite side of that piece, and the Ways and Means chair changed their and put that to the back burner, and the administration came out that they would veto the 2% adjustment to the extra defense to go up to 7%, to go to 8%, so that the administration indicated they would likely veto such a charter change request. That conversation sort of died, and so what I've done in relation to that is to try to pick this one up. And as far as the amount of money goes, all we were able to help do for all town highway structure, class 2 aid was put in the inflation adjustment, which went by 1.4 million additional for towns last year. If we can find something that's even remotely in that ballpark, it's more than anybody else is bringing to the table for them, is how I shouldn't say that. So there's no additional money that way coming from anywhere else. And that's why I'm trying to do something. But I appreciate that. I don't know if that answers your question, but the administration saying they would veto the charter change, and the Ways and Means saying they're not ready for that fight is why that piece is not moving and why I'm trying to go in a different direction. Representative.
Well, as you know,
Thomas.
I brought this, sorry, brilliant idea. We'll, tax the gas stations. And of course, that turned out to be completely impossible because the way the gas is distributed. So I just was hoping to find some other means of revenue for my town and other towns. And it sounds like this is might be a little bit of revenue, but not particularly significant. Anyway, thank you.
Representative Thomas.
Yeah, I have a concern about distributing the surplus to the town highway fund. I mean, there are communities that are making the sacrifice to raise this revenue, and they're then remitting, 25% at this point to the state, which is being used for a variety of other purposes that we're learning about. If there's surplus, I think it should go back to the communities that generated it. It's just doesn't really strike me as fair to distribute that then across the state. Massachusetts, for example, 100% of local option tax revenue goes to the municipalities that generate it. And so I just have a hard time kind of with that concept.
I certainly can appreciate that. And I look at the pilot fund that's only been funding towns in need now full for only 3 years. And we have no consideration in the building to go back and make them whole for all the years that they were shorted. So I share a frustration in that arena. I can't answer the part other than trying to do something for town highways across the state. And whether that can or can't be part of the solution is a really good point to bring up.
It's just challenging, especially when, we're hearing a lot of interest from towns and VLCT to be able to address the serious resource needs, and we're not making any moves to allow towns to address that. And then the surplus that they did generate is going to other purposes that aren't directly addressing their goals.
Which happens today, and money comes from all over the place. And I would say that the argument that I'm hearing, especially in the Senate, is that the towns that have the ability to tax are supported and lived by a huge amount of towns around them that do not have the ability to tax, that do not have, and Stowe being the biggest example, that there's most of the workers that work in Stowe come from the surrounding communities that do not have the economy to have that. So that's the argument that's going on in the Senate. It's not that I'm saying that that's the argument. The argument is that all of the road structures used by everybody and those workers that are getting to and from work, then using town highways have no way to raise any money in their local options. They have no store, they have no commerce, and that if we don't feed the entire network, and we were only to do it in towns that had that taxing structure, people would not be able to get to and from those towns.
Sure, and I hear that, and I think in that case, the state should show leadership in terms of generating the amount of revenue needed to manage our road system. But that's my perspective.
But that is above my pay grade.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and there's an argument there, but, town of Heinsberg, local option tax, we've tried to do it. We're not gonna raise very much because people aren't coming to Heinsberg to buy washing machines. But they are going to Williston to buy, and people from Heinsberg are going to Williston to buy washing machines and paying that 1% tax. So getting a little bit back for the surrounding towns who have to maintain roads and allow people to get to Williston to buy it. So, I think it's both sides. This is I think a reasonable compromise. In fact, it was 70-30 at one time, right? Now it's 75-25.
We did 3 years ago, 2023, I believe, but we'll get more from that.
David, I thought it was last year or the year before, this fund was used to fund their reappraisals for the towns, was like a chunk out, taken out, and I thought that was at a continuous basis. I don't know how that's gonna affect the language there. That was like 3 million or something that we took out of
I
this.
believe there is money that's been used for Lister education, and I'm seeing.
Yeah, but I thought it
Good
was
Molly's
like
head.
1 year, is that like a
So-
continuous thing? Thanks. Yeah, so we would have that issue. But I just sort of,
And
Yeah.
we're gonna have to let you go to, everybody's gotta go to the floor. I will say that there are huge, I am suspecting, and as we learn, and generating this conversation alone has already generated some feedback. There are a lot of people that have put the stake in the ground for that piece of the money, and I'm saying that I think that helping towns is high on that list for me, and I want the stake in the ground that, can we get something?
no, I agree with that.
And we may not, but I'm willing to put up the fight for, and I would be interested in anybody that's gonna go back and tell their town highways that they had a chance to help them and they're not going to. So.
No, that's my point was, is their stake is already in there.
And we're behind, right? Yes.
So I'm just saying it's gonna affect that language if it's already planned.
We'd have to go, we're only gonna get
We
this.
would have to undo that, was what I'm saying, we would have to repeal.
Or after that, we would be in line
Or
after.
after that, yeah, whatever you want to do, yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
well, last one.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, we have a state tax system that redistributes opportunities and resources in many ways. So this is just one more example of that. So, you know, we want a Vermont that works for everybody. I think we all have to pay a little bit. And, you know, yeah, my town certainly would like to keep 100%, but, you know, it all for one for all, I think, here. And this is not inconsistent with how we finance education, for example, and lots of other needs in the state. So
We are, thank you. I'm glad you're feeling better, Molly. We look forward to seeing you next week, but we are, before you do hang out, in case, right now, the plan is to come back to committee 20 minutes after the floor ends. But depending on how late that goes, I will keep you updated. But right now, the plan is 20 minutes after the floor ends, which may be after lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
I'll check in and say,